Welcome to Zoe Stories. My boss's deal left me in makeup and skirts. It was just another regular day at the office, but I could feel the tension building up inside me. I had always been the kind of person who blended into the background, quiet, reserved, and trying my best to go unnoticed. My name is Alex, and I work as a junior marketing assistant at a mid-sized tech company. On the outside, my life looked typical. I had a steady job, a comfortable apartment in the city, and a relationship with Emma, my girlfriend of 2 years. But there was more to me than what met the eye. Beneath the surface, I carried a secret that had the potential to ruin everything. I wasn't just a regular guy. I had a passion for crossdressing. At first, it was something I did in the privacy of my apartment, trying on clothes and experimenting with makeup whenever Emma wasn't around. It started as a form of self-expression, an exploration of a side of me that I couldn't ignore. Over time, it evolved into something deeper. I found comfort in the clothes, the makeup, the heels. It gave me a sense of control, a release from the suffocating pressure of my everyday life. But no matter how much I enjoyed it, there was always that looming fear. Fear that Emma would find out. Fear that someone at work might see me, even though I kept my secret carefully hidden. That fear became a reality one fateful afternoon when my boss, Greg Matthews, called me into his office. Greg was the type of boss you didn't want to disappoint. He was sharp, assertive, and always seemed to have a way of getting what he wanted. We had a good professional relationship, but I always felt a little uneasy around him. Maybe it was the way he looked at me sometimes, or the fact that he seemed to always be watching my every move. But I never thought for a second that he would be the one to find out my secret. "Alex," he began, sitting back in his chair and crossing his arms, "I need to talk to you about something personal." I felt a lump form in my throat. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I tried to remain composed, keeping my face neutral, but inside, my mind was racing. Was he onto me? Did he know? But I couldn't say anything, couldn't let him see the fear in my eyes. "What's going on, Greg?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Greg's eyes locked onto mine, his expression unreadable. He slid a piece of paper across the desk towards me. I glanced down at it. It was a formal-looking contract. "I've been observing your work, Alex," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You've been doing well, but there's something else I think you could help with. A special project, if you will." I blinked, still trying to process what was happening. A project? He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Yes. You see, there's an event coming up in a few weeks. A corporate gala, actually. But it's not just any gala. This year, there's a bit of a twist. We've been told that we need to send a different kind of representative. Someone who can stand out, someone who can make an impression." I frowned, still confused. "And you want me to be the one to represent the company?" Greg smirked slightly, as if I were missing the point. "Not just represent. You're going to be part of this special project." I paused. Something didn't feel right. "What do you mean by special, Greg?" He didn't answer immediately, instead watching my reaction carefully. "We've been told that some people in the company need to step out of their comfort zones. You know, shake things up. And you, Alex, I think you're the perfect person for the job." My heart started to race, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "What exactly do you want me to do?" Greg's grin widened as he stood up and walked over to a small table in the corner of the room. He picked up a black garment bag and held it out to me. "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be given a makeover. Makeup, hair, a new wardrobe. Everything. You'll be attending the gala as a woman, representing the company in a way no one else could." I stared at him, stunned. I had been preparing myself for anything but this. A part of me wanted to say no, to walk out of that office and pretend this conversation had never happened. But another part of me, a part one barely understood, felt a strange thrill at the thought. A chance to finally wear what I wanted to wear in public. A chance to be someone else for a night. It was terrifying, but it was also exciting. I opened my mouth to refuse, but before I could, Greg's voice stopped me. "You're not going to say no, Alex," he said, his tone now more commanding than ever. "I'm offering you a deal. You can either go along with this project, or you can risk losing your job. The choice is yours." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My job, my livelihood, was on the line. I knew I couldn't afford to lose it. The decision was clear, even if it meant stepping into something I wasn't ready for. "Fine," I whispered, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. "I'll do it." Greg smiled, a look of satisfaction crossing his face. "I knew you'd make the right choice. I'll have everything arranged. This is your chance to prove yourself, Alex." As I left his office, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. My mind was racing, and my hands trembled slightly as I tried to process what had just happened. I was going to have to dress as a woman, in front of people, and there was no going back. But as I walked back to my desk, I couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity building inside me. What would it be like? Would I feel different? Would this make me feel more me than I had ever felt before? The thought lingered in my mind as I tried to prepare myself for the inevitable. At home that evening, I tried to push the thoughts aside as I spent time with Emma. She was always supportive of me, though she didn't know about my secret life. But I could tell something was bothering me. "Alex, you're quiet tonight," Emma said, glancing up from her book. "What's on your mind?" I hesitated, unsure whether to tell her about Greg's proposal. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I forced a smile. "Just work stuff." "It's nothing," I lied, though the weight of the secret hung heavy on my chest. The day after my conversation with Greg, I could hardly focus at work. My mind kept drifting back to the deal he had made with me. The thought of dressing as a woman in front of my colleagues, of attending the gala in full makeup, heels, and a dress, it felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. And yet, beneath the surface, there was a part of me that felt excitement. A part of me that had always wanted to explore this side of me more fully, but was too afraid to act on it. But now I had no choice. I was going to have to wear that dress, put on the makeup, and pretend to be someone I wasn't for a night, at least. It was either that or risk losing everything. As the days passed, I became more and more anxious. I kept imagining what it would feel like to slip into those clothes, to wear makeup on my face, to change my entire persona. The anticipation gnawed at me. But it wasn't just the external transformation that scared me. It was the internal one too. Was I really going to go through with it? Would I feel like an imposter? Or would it feel liberating? What would happen if Emma found out? I hadn't told her yet. I couldn't. She would never understand. She knew I had an interest in fashion. She even joked about how often I liked to dress up for fun, but she had no idea how deep it went. And the thought of her discovering the truth made my stomach twist in knots. How would she react? Would she be disgusted? Would she think I was hiding something from her? I couldn't risk that. Not yet. The weekend before the gala arrived, and I found myself standing in front of the mirror in my apartment, staring at the black garment bag that Greg had given me. The bag had been sitting in my closet for days, a constant reminder of the deal I'd made. It was time to face it. I took a deep breath and unzipped the bag. Inside was a sleek, black dress with a fitted bodice and a flare at the hips. It looked elegant, polished, and intimidating. I had never worn anything like it before. Next to it was a pair of shiny black heels, so tall I wasn't sure if I would be able to walk in them. And then there was the makeup kit, foundations, powders, lipsticks, mascara, eyeshadow. All of it arranged neatly, waiting for me to put it to use. My hands trembled as I reached for the dress. The fabric felt smooth and cool against my fingers, like nothing I'd ever touched before. I held it up against my body, imagining what it would look like on me. The image in my head made my heart race. The feeling of slipping into something so completely foreign to me, yet so deeply desired, was overwhelming. But then doubt crept in. What if I didn't look right? What if I didn't pull it off? What if I looked like a man in a dress, a complete joke? I shook my head, trying to push those thoughts aside. I had no choice. I had agreed to this, and now it was time to follow through. I undressed, stripping away the familiar clothes I wore every day. The sensation of shedding my old self was strangely freeing, almost like I was shedding a layer of skin. I slipped into the dress, the fabric hugging my body in all the right places. It felt different. Empowering, even. but also vulnerable. For the first time in my life, I was seeing myself as someone else, someone completely new. I reached for the makeup kit. As I started to apply the foundation, I couldn't help but marvel at how different I looked with each brushstroke. The makeup transformed my face, accentuating my features in a way that was both strange and exciting. I carefully applied eyeshadow, blending the colors until my eyes looked bolder, more defined. I did my lips next, choosing a dark red that felt daring. And then, the mascara, sweeping it across my lashes, felt like an act of rebellion, as if I were doing something forbidden but incredibly thrilling. When I was done, I looked at myself in the mirror. The person staring back at me wasn't Alex anymore. She was someone else, someone elegant, confident, and completely transformed. I ran my fingers through my hair, adjusting the wig that Greg had given me. It fell in soft waves around my face, completing the illusion. For a moment, I just stared at my reflection. Was this me? The person in the mirror felt so far removed from the quiet, unassuming man I had been just hours ago. This new version of me. She was bold, unapologetic, and full of confidence. It was exhilarating, but also terrifying. I stepped into the heels. My legs felt wobbly at first, and I nearly stumbled as I tried to take my first steps. But as I continued, I grew more accustomed to the unfamiliar height. It was like learning to walk all over again. Every step felt deliberate, every motion heightened. I was no longer Alex, I was someone else entirely. Someone who could walk confidently in heels, someone who could wear a dress and makeup without hesitation. But just as I began to get used to this new identity, the door creaked open behind me. Alex. Emma's voice floated in from the hallway. I froze. My heart leapt into my throat. My hands instinctively reached up to adjust the wig, but it was too late. She was already here. Alex, what are you? Her voice trailed off as she stepped into the room, her gaze falling on me in shock. I quickly turned to face her, panic rising in my chest. Emma, She was silent for a moment, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. Then finally she spoke. Is this what you've been doing? I swallowed hard, unable to speak. My mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation, but no words came. I had never expected this moment to come like this. Her eyes softened slightly, but there was still a flicker of confusion and uncertainty in them. Alex, what is this? Why didn't you tell me? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The truth was too complicated, too messy. How could I explain it all to her? The moment Emma walked in and caught me in the act, I felt like time had stopped. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath became shallow. Every instinct screamed at me to explain myself, to come up with something, anything, to defuse the situation. But all that came out was a choked whisper of her name. Emma, But she didn't let me finish. She stepped into the room fully, her eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and confusion. She had never seen me like this before. She knew about my little fashion quirks, how I enjoyed experimenting with clothes, but this was entirely different. She wasn't prepared for this version of me. And, truthfully, neither was I. Alex. Her voice was soft, but the way she said my name made my heart tighten. There was no judgment in her eyes, yet, but there was a question that hung between us. Before I could say anything, she walked closer, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, slowly, as if she were trying to understand what was going on. I could feel my hands tremble, the makeup on my face suddenly feeling heavy and suffocating. For a brief moment, I wondered if I could just disappear into the floor. Maybe this was all a bad dream, a nightmare I would wake from any second. But no, this was real. I didn't expect this, she said quietly, her voice shaking with a mix of surprise and confusion. I thought you were just playing around. But this. I opened my mouth to explain, but nothing coherent came out. All I could do was stand there, frozen in my transformation, caught between the man I used to be and the woman I was now pretending to be. Why didn't you tell me, Alex? Emma asked, her eyes softening slightly, but there was still a tension in her voice. Is this something you've been hiding from me? I couldn't answer. My mind was a mess of conflicting emotions. Should I tell her the truth? Or should I just let her think I was simply experimenting with something I had no real intention of pursuing? But the reality was I was already too far gone. This wasn't just some experiment anymore. It was me. This was a part of me I had hidden for so long, and now it was all out in the open. I could see the emotions flickering in her eyes, confusion, hurt, maybe even betrayal. But before I could figure out how to respond, she took a step closer to me. "Are you really doing this for the gala?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a trace of something else, suspicion. "Because if this is some deal you made with Greg, I don't know if I can handle that." I winced. She knew about Greg. She knew about the offer I had made, about the consequences of refusing it. But even though she knew the deal, she didn't know how deep my feelings for this transformation went. "Emma, please," I whispered, the words finally catching up with the fear and guilt that had been brewing inside me. "It's not just for the gala. It's a part of who I am." I watched her face for any sign of understanding, any sign that she would forgive me for hiding this side of myself for so long. But there was none. She stepped back, shaking her head. "How long has this been going on, Alex? How long have you been hiding this from me?" she asked, her voice cracking. The hurt in her eyes stung more than I ever expected it to. "I never meant for it to be like this," I said quickly, trying to explain myself. But the more I tried, the worse it got. The truth seemed too complicated to explain, too much to say all at once. "I didn't want you to think less of me, Emma." She looked away for a moment, her hands clutching at her own arms as if she were trying to hold herself together. I knew I had to tell her everything, but part of me was terrified of what she might do when she found out the whole truth, that I had kept this secret from her for so long. "How long have you been dressing like this?" she asked suddenly, her voice low but filled with urgency. "Have you done this before?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, a few times," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it was always just for me. I never meant for it to become something bigger." It wasn't until Greg made this deal that She cut me off, her hands trembling at her sides. "I don't know what to say, Alex," she said, her voice a mixture of frustration and confusion. "I don't know if I can just pretend this isn't a big deal. This isn't just some game. It's not something you just slip into and out of whenever it suits you." I swallowed hard. She was right. It wasn't just a game. This was something I had been struggling with for years. I had been hiding it for so long, trying to convince myself that I didn't need to explore it, that it wasn't who I was. But in reality, it had been a part of me all along. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. I froze, and so did Emma. Neither of us expected anyone else. I was supposed to be home alone, preparing for the gala in peace. But now, the very last thing I needed was an interruption. Emma's eyes locked with mine, her face pale with the sudden realization of what was about to happen. "Who is that?" she asked, her voice sharp. I didn't know how to answer. I could only stand there, heart racing, as the knock sounded again, louder this time. I started to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The last thing I wanted was for Emma to see me like this, caught between two worlds, neither fully one nor the other. "I don't know." She looked at me in disbelief, clearly still processing everything that had just happened. But before we could say another word, the door opened, and there stood Greg, with a wide grin on his face. "Ready for the gala, Alex?" he asked, as though this were the most normal thing in the world. The door stood wide open, and there he was, Greg, smiling like the smug, arrogant bastard he always was. He didn't notice the heavy tension in the room, the way Emma's eyes burned with a mix of confusion, anger, and hurt. I could see the moment her eyes flicked back to me, searching for answers she had already started to piece together. Greg, oblivious to the emotional storm in the room, walked in with his usual cocky confidence. "Got everything you need for the gala, right?" he asked, glancing at me and then at Emma. I didn't know how to respond. How could I explain this mess? How could I tell Emma the truth now, with Greg in the room, as though everything was normal? I felt trapped between two worlds, one where I was trying to hide my transformation, and the other where I was caught in this deal with Greg, a deal I'd made out of desperation. "Why don't you tell her, Alex?" Greg said, suddenly turning his gaze toward me. His voice was smooth, almost mocking. "It's all part of the plan, after all." Emma's head snapped to Greg, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. What plan?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What is he talking about?" I opened my mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I was too scared to say it out loud, too ashamed of the situation I had gotten myself into. But Emma wasn't giving up. "What did you do, Alex?" she demanded, her voice growing more urgent. "Why didn't you tell me?" The questions kept coming, but I didn't have any answers. At least, none that felt like they could undo the damage I had caused. I had wanted to keep this hidden from Emma, to shield her from the confusion and shame I felt. But now, all the walls I had built up were crumbling down, and everything was out in the open. Greg stepped forward, his grin widening. "You really think you can hide this from her, Alex? You think you can just wear that dress, that makeup, and pretend it doesn't mean something more?" His words stung, but they were true. I had been lying to myself, pretending this was just a temporary phase. But I was beyond that point now. I wanted to fight back, to tell him to leave, to stop interfering in my life. But Emma was standing there, her eyes locked on me, waiting for me to explain. She had already seen the truth, but how much of it was she willing to accept? "I didn't mean for it to get this far," I finally said, my voice cracking. "This isn't just for the gala. This is part of me, part of who I am." The silence that followed was suffocating. Emma didn't speak. She just stared at me, her lips pressed together in a thin line. She had heard me, but I wasn't sure if she understood. And in that moment, I wasn't sure if I cared anymore. It wasn't just about the transformation anymore. It was about the fact that I had kept it a secret from her for so long. That was the real betrayal. "I never wanted to hurt you," I added, my voice trembling. "I didn't know how to tell you this. I didn't know how to tell you that I like this. I like being this way." The admission hung in the air like a heavy weight. But instead of the expected anger or rejection, Emma's expression softened, and I saw something else in her eyes, something I hadn't expected. Uncertainty. "Alex." She began slowly, taking a step toward me. "I don't know what to say. This is so much to process. But why didn't you trust me enough to tell me before?" Her voice cracked as she finished the sentence. I couldn't answer. There was no excuse. The truth was, I hadn't trusted her enough to share this part of myself. And now, I had to live with the consequences. Greg, still hovering in the background, decided this was the perfect moment to add his commentary. "You really thought you could hide this, huh, Alex?" he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You thought she wouldn't find out? You thought it wouldn't matter when you signed that deal?" That was it, the final twist. The deal. It wasn't just about me cross-dressing for the gala. It was about something much bigger. A bargain I had made with Greg, one that I could never undo. I could feel Emma's eyes on me, waiting for me to explain. I couldn't hold back anymore. "I made a deal with Greg," I confessed. "I promised to dress like this for the gala, but it's more than that. If I don't keep up with it, he'll destroy everything. My job, my life, everything I've worked for." Emma's eyes widened in shock. "What do you mean?" "You." But I could see the understanding dawning in her eyes. She knew. She understood now. The deal wasn't just some casual arrangement. It was something that held power over me. Something that controlled my actions, my choices. And it was all coming to a head. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked softly, her voice filled with hurt. I couldn't give her an answer. There was no easy way to explain why I had been so terrified of losing everything I had worked for, why I had chosen to hide this side of myself rather than face the truth. I had let Greg manipulate me, let him convince me that this was my only way out. "You know, Alex," Greg said, cutting through the tension in the room, "you've already gone this far. Don't back out now. You've got a lot to lose if you do." But the moment his words hung in the air, Emma spoke up. "Enough," she said sharply. "I don't care about your deal, Greg. What I care about is Alex. What I care about is that he's been hiding this from me." The room fell into a heavy silence as the truth settled in. There was no going back. The secret was out, and now I had to face the consequences. But what would those consequences be? Would Emma leave me? Would Greg's power over me finally crumble? Or would everything fall apart before I could rebuild the trust one had lost? I stood there in the center of the room, my world collapsing around me. The weight of the secrets, the lies, the deals, it all hit me at once. I had tried to hold everything together, to pretend that everything was fine, but now, with Greg in the room and Emma staring at me, I knew it was over. There was no escaping it anymore. Emma was still standing by the door, her arms crossed, her face a mix of disbelief and hurt. She hadn't spoken since I told her about the deal with Greg. Her silence was deafening, and the longer it lasted, the more I felt like I was suffocating under the pressure. Greg, ever the opportunist, took a step forward, his smirk never wavering.
"See? Told you it'd be this way."
"But don't worry, Alex," he said with a sickeningly sweet tone. "You've come this far and you don't really have a choice now. You'll play the part or everything goes up in flames." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The stakes had never been higher. Everything I had worked for, every ounce of trust one had built with Emma, was hanging by a thread. And Greg knew it. He could see the fear in my eyes, and it seemed to fuel him even more. "Do you want me to leave, Alex?" Emma finally spoke, her voice cold and distant. "Is that what you want? For me to just walk away?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had never imagined that she would walk away from me, especially not like this. But I knew that I had brought this upon myself. I had kept my secrets, I had lied to her, and now I was paying the price. I began, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't know what to say. Could I explain everything to her in this moment? Could I make her understand why I had done what I did? Or was it too late for that? Emma's gaze softened for a split second, but it was quickly replaced with resolve. "You're not the person I thought you were, Alex," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I thought I knew you, but now I don't know who you are anymore." I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and I felt a surge of guilt and panic. What had I done? How had it come to this? I had never wanted to hurt her, but now it seemed like I had lost her. The weight of my decisions was crushing me. "Emma, please," I whispered, stepping toward her, but she took a step back, her face hardening. "Don't," she said firmly, holding up her hand. "I need space. I need time to think. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Alex." The words cut through me like a knife, and I felt my knees weaken. I had tried so hard to keep everything together, but now it was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Greg, always the opportunist, seemed to enjoy the scene playing out before him. He leaned casually against the wall, watching as if it were some sort of entertainment. "Looks like someone's in trouble," he said, his tone dripping with satisfaction. "But don't worry, Alex. You've made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." I shot him a glare, but I couldn't find the strength to confront him. My attention was solely on Emma. She was slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to get her back. Was it too late? Had I ruined everything beyond repair? Just as I thought things couldn't get worse, Emma looked at me one last time, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and anger. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Alex," she whispered, before turning and walking out the door. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, and I was left standing there, alone with the aftermath of my actions. I couldn't believe it was happening. I had thought that everything would be fine, that I could balance the deal with Greg, the transformation, and my relationship with Emma. But now I was facing the consequences of my choices. I wanted to run after her, to beg for forgiveness, but I knew it was pointless. She needed time, space, things that I couldn't give her right now. And deep down, I was afraid that even if I tried, it wouldn't be enough. Greg let out a small, satisfied chuckle as he pushed himself off the wall and walked toward me. "Well, that's one way to ruin your life," he said mockingly. "But hey, no turning back now, right?" I didn't answer him. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. All I could do was watch as Greg smirked at me, knowing that he had won. He had played me, manipulated me, and now he was the one in control. And I was left with nothing. The door slammed shut behind Emma, and I was left standing in the silence of my own making. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I had lost Emma, and I had no idea how to get her back. But one thing was certain. The game was far from over.